What is going on, guys? We skipped a week, but that means we're still undefeated. So you can't hold that week against us. I'm back with my buddy Fred. We're here to talk about one of the games I am most excited for this weekend. You've got the Philadelphia Eagles going down to the New Orleans Saints in a game that before the season really was favored for the Eagles, but now all of a sudden we're coming into this game and we are seeing that it is favored by the Saints.
It's going to be an intriguing matchup, Brian. I believe the Saints got to a hot start, one of them being versus the Panthers, right? Panthers are not the greatest team, but last week's win was critical. I think versus Dallas, not many people expected that type of beating. And on the flip side, you got an Eagles team that a little bit of unknown right now. A.J. Brown, is he going to play? That's a key piece. And they've been struggling to stop the run. And with Alvin Kamara, the way he played last week, that can spell trouble. I'm pretty excited for this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Eagles come in, they're supposed to be the best team in the NFC. And right now, it's kind of that matchup where they're playing the team firing all cylinders. And to be honest with you, I can't really think of a time where I've circled like a week 3 and been like, well, this is a must win. But I don't want to say it's a must win, but I do feel like if this is another bad Philadelphia loss, because as you said, when you look at what Philadelphia has done, you know, the fraud check can really come this week. To me, that's going to be the biggest question. Can you play offensively and defensively? Because, you know, we know what Jalen Hurts brings to the table, but we've also seen some questions on defense. As far as what you mentioned there with the Saints, you're right. Like, you know, okay, nobody really thought they were going to go into Dallas and win. And now you've got a whole lot of stress on this Eagles team, which, as you said, is out with its best receiver right now. And we really don't even know what the status of that is.
Yeah, he's still questionable for that game. And a couple things, right? I think there's a cause of concern with that last drive for the Falcons last time out. You can't allow that. You're up in the game. You're supposed to win that game, and you allow a touchdown pretty much in the last couple seconds of the game. That's a huge cause for concern. And then along with that, too, the Falcons' ability to dominate that line of scrimmage last week was another cause for concern, especially facing a Kamara that just balled out against Dallas. And Dallas's defense is ranked at the top right now, especially after that game versus Cleveland. Well, Deshaun Watson lost that game, not Dallas's defense. But nonetheless, it's going to be an interesting one. And the spread is at a key number right now, 2.5. I think if A.J. Brown comes back and he's fully ready to go, that line will push down a little bit. But I'm curious to see if Vegas pushes it up to that key number 3.
Well, I think as you mentioned, when you look at that last drive, it's ironic because when I think about Kirk Cousins, I don't really think of like, you know, the go-to quarterback. And this week with Derek Carr, I mean, these are not guys that are the guy, right? These are guys in their 30s on their second, third team. They're not the franchise quarterback. They're the quarterback you really don't want to beat you. Yeah, they're going to give you solid play, but they're not going to be the man. And when you look at a pass rush that really was ineffective last week, only got 1 sack. And as you said, you let a team walk down the field on you and score a touchdown. It's demoralizing for a defense that really is supposed to not allow that to happen. And when you talk about the fact that I really don't believe you're going to have A.J. Brown on the field. I know there was some kind of back and forth with reporters and him maybe saying too much. You know, all of that to me also, when you have players that come out and they talk about their injuries and they give timelines that the team does not want out there, that to me shows, at least in the locker room, you don't have full control of your team. You know, you would think that coaching at some level, right, whether it's a receivers coach, whether it's an offensive coach, someone sits down and says, listen, you know, don't go out and say what the problem is, because on the other side of this, you got to remember Marcus Lattimore is out too. Marcus Lattimore is not sitting around saying, well, I'm going to be back this week if I feel good, or I'm going to go through a warm up, or I'm going to go through, you know, a walkthrough. You don't have that on the other side. And I understand that there's probably a lot larger implications when you look at Brown being out as opposed to Lattimore. But at the same time, as far as game planning, they both factor in. And as I said, you know, to me, it's not complicated what the Saints are doing. You know, you've got Shaheed, who is going to be the deep guy. You've got Kamara, who's going to be the battering ram. And you've got Olave that's kind of this, I don't want to call him a possession receiver because he's not, but he is kind of this yards after the catch receiver that will allow you to just kind of get burnt every single way that you can. And are you going to have a defense that's going to be able to stabilize and shore up? Because when you have a receiving threat like that, and when you have a running back like that, you can really adapt from not just half to half, but quarter to quarter, and see what's going to work best and be most effective. And that's where I worry the most for Philadelphia.
Yeah, I believe this is going to be a game that the running game dictates the outcome of this game. Saints know that the Eagles are struggling defending the rush right now, specifically after last week. And on the flip side, the Eagles are going to try to use Barkley as much as possible, especially if A.J. Brown's out. Now, if I'm not mistaken here, I think the Eagles rank 7th against the pass right now in the season so far, right? And they did hold the Falcons pretty well in the third down conversions, which I look at a lot. Third down to me is a big key stat that I look at with teams. Held them, I think, to like 2 or 10, 2 or 9, give or take. So whoever can get that running game going as best as possible is going to open up the field. And if it's Kamara running the ball well, it's going to open it up for the wide receivers. And Derek Carr's throwing that ball extremely well. Yes, nobody expected him to do much this season. Nobody expected the Saints to do much this season either. I can promise you nobody expected them to be 2-0 to start the season, right? And not to be favored against the Eagles today at this weekend at -2.5. So that running game is going to dictate a lot. Eagles rushing defense needs to step up. And let's call it what it is, too. The Eagles could have dominated that game, and there was key mistakes by Barkley. Barkley should have converted that third down at the end of the game. And along with that, too, he should have scored that touchdown, too, in the beginning of the game, and he didn't, right? So if it's a bounce-back game for him, the Eagles could make a move in this game, but it's really going to depend on that offensive lineman and that running game.
Well, it's funny because you would think that it comes down to chemistry. I mean, Saquon, obviously, major signing, major acquisition. You don't really have, I think the last time I can really remember the Eagles having like a major player leave or move this way was when McNabb went to Washington. That was a huge deal that could happen. And now you've got obviously the Giants' legacy between those two teams. You get Barkley to come over, and there's going to be some growing pains. I feel overall he's played relatively well, better than I expected him to play, to be honest with you. But on the other side, you've got the same chemistry questions with Derek Carr. It just seems to me like the Saints are playing better overall football. They're playing more as a team. And I don't know why that is. Like we talked about earlier, maybe it comes down to coaching. Maybe it comes down to the locker room. Maybe it comes down to not having a leader on offense, or in the case of Brown, maybe you've got a built-in excuse. When your number one receiver isn't there, it's going to be a challenge, and everyone has to step up. And we've seen, not just with the Eagles, not just with last week, we've seen for decades in football, when teams are put in this position where overall, offensive, defensive, someone has to step up and win a game. Not every team, not every player is capable of stepping up. And a lot of times what happens is you have a player that tries to step up too much. I'm a Colts fan. I saw it my whole life. Peyton Manning tried to step up, do too much. Andrew Luck tried to step up, do too much. I don't think that Jalen Hurts is in that situation, but we did see last week, Jalen Hurts, very simple mistake. I mean, a pass that really, really didn't need to be forced. He is a very good quarterback, and he should not be making those mistakes, more so now. When you talk about a guy that's been in the conversation for MVP of the league, right? He should be better than that. Is he going to continue to show that he's better than that? And honestly, I think you could look back at this game and say one of two things. You could say, well, the Eagles won. Of course they should have. They're going against, Derek Carr and friends. But then you also could look at an Eagles team that, again, like I said, looks back, pass rush, defense, all the pieces aren't there, and obviously the missing piece on offense. You could look at a team that could quickly start to lose control of its season if they go out and don't at least play competitive. A loss, like we talked about before, week 3, you can't panic, right? It's not the end of the season. But if you go out and you don't look competitive, if you don't go out and play a close game, you lose by a field goal, okay, it is what it is. Every team does it. But if you don't play competitive and look solid this week, this could be a real problem in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I agree. And I think touching on what you said, why the Saints are playing a little bit better, I think they're playing free. There's no expectations to them. Whereas the Eagles, Nick Sirianni, we can argue that he's in the hot seat right now. If he doesn't do what they expect him to do this season, he's going to be gone from that team. And there's pressure on them. They just signed Barkley, a key piece in that offense. Hurts, a guy that's expected to do a lot. And yes, I don't think he's played bad. My concern with him is that he holds the ball a little too long sometimes when he's passing. And he tries to make, I wouldn't call it a Superman play, but the Lamar Jackson play, where he's hovering around the pocket, trying to figure out the best play. And sometimes you're better off just laying it 5 yards and moving the ball forward. So that's my concern for him. But I believe it's a lot to do with pressure. And like you said, I think this is a game where if they come out and they lose a competitive game, you don't freak out. But if they get dominated, let's put it into perspective the way the Saints dominated the Cowboys. If that happens to the Eagles, there's going to be panic in that locker room. Now, and to touch on the 2-0 start for the Saints, I think it's early in the season too, right? I think we're really going to know what these two teams are going to be about by week 6. Saints, are they in a little hot streak that can end this coming weekend and they could start getting checked up a little bit in the few coming weeks? Maybe. I personally, and I don't know about you, Ryan, do you expect, I know the odds have changed now in the favor of the Saints, but do you expect the Saints to continue this trajectory and continue dominating teams and potentially make the playoffs?
I don't. I honestly think that the Cinderella story ends this weekend. I think the Eagles, A.J. Brown or not, are going to put it together. They're going to get that close win. I believe it's going to be a competitive game. Could go either way. I would just, though, personally, I'm going to go Eagles money line rather than play the points. But I do feel like this is going to be one where the Eagles are going to want to come out, set the tone, put their foot down, and say, listen, we're expected to be the best team in the NFC for a reason, and we're not going to drop 2 in a row to division opponents, and we're going to make our example now. Everyone's coming in kind of underneath their breath saying, hey, this is a time where the Saints can eventually put themselves in a position to look fantastic and beat a team that is supposed to be the contender in the NFC. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think you're going to see a little bit of that little brother situation come in when the Eagles are ready to show exactly what they're used to doing and what they can do. I don't, like you said before, the expectations for the Saints have not been there. They're overachieving right now. The Eagles are underachieving, and something has to give. And I think it's going to be the Eagles are going to show, hey, they are the overachiever perennially in this division, and they are going to be the ones that come out with the win.
I'm with you on that. To back you up on the money line, they're 1-8-1 over the last 10 at the spread, the Philadelphia Eagles. So taking them to spread hasn't been profitable over the last 10 games. I like them on the money line here as well. I think they're going to come out strong. A.J. Brown not playing, I would wait for that decision because I am leaning that he's not going to play, like you said. So if he doesn't play, I expect that line to push up a little bit, which would give us better odds to take the Eagles money line and get paid out a little bit more. So I do like the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm with you on that. I think the Cinderella story ends this weekend as well. Saints, great job. They'll be a competitive team, but I think that bubble gets burst and it's not going to continue.
Absolutely. Agree with you. Going to be a fun game to watch. Guess we will wait back and see if we can stay undefeated on our own streak. Appreciate you guys watching this video. We will both be back as soon as we can with more commentary.
Take care.